treat them as our brothers and sisters. Teach them our ways. Keep up, Forest Boy!
If you want to live here, you have to ride.
Let's do it.
You know, you made the biggest movie of all time. We would have thought you would have come back right away, but you didn't. What was the holdup? What was the delay? Was it technology? Was it story? Was it life? What was it?
Well, if you think about it, after I did Titanic, I went off and did deep ocean expeditions for 8 years. After Avatar, I only did deep ocean expeditions for 2 years, so that's better, right? And then, you know, the decision was not to make one movie. If we had just made one movie, we'd been back in the marketplace after about five years or so, right? The decision was to make 4 movies and to basically kind of front load all the development, all the design, all the writing, all the building of the tool set, everything that was necessary, so that when we made them, we could make them in kind of bunches, kind of 2 tranches, right? So we've got movie 2's done, movie 3's in the can, first act of movie 4's in the can, then later we'll come back and we'll do 4 and 5 together. But the idea is to sort of release them into the marketplace in a cadence, so they're 2 to 3 years apart as we go ahead from this point onward, so that if we get some momentum in our pop culture, then people don't have to whine about us being gone so long next time, right? But it's like if we're successful and people like the world and they like the characters, they're going to want to come back on a more regular basis, so we don't stretch that tether of acceptance so long. I hope that all makes sense. It was kind of like, measure 50 times and cut once.
Yes, it totally does. Mr. Cameron, what was the key for you to unlocking this story? How many iterations of the story did you go through before you settled in on what Way of Water was going to be?
We knew what it was going to be. We knew what the overall story arc was going to be. The biggest problem was cracking the code of Act 1 of the first of the series of movies, because all the pressure was on Act 1. We had to not only recapitulate the first story to give people a sense of a grounding, we had to account for the missing 15 years and what happened, and set the table for the events of the actual story. And then we had to get to a point, because I always made it my target that they would get to the reef and get to the reef people by the end of Act 1. 14 tries, 14 separate drafts of Act 1 of movie 2. It just seemed like impossible. So eventually I made certain decisions. We restructured the story. I took some elements that had been part of Act 1 and put them into movie 3, which was part of how the whole thing split apart. And I also said, you know what, I'm not even going to bother to tell you what happened in Avatar 1. Just go see it. Highest grossing film in history. Enough people have seen it. I'm not going to worry about it. So we focus, and you've seen the film, we focus on the missing 15 years, them having children, starting a family, adopting Kitty, and then it ends with the humans coming back, and we're back into a scenario where the humans are, kind of on top, and Jake is in this kind of guerrilla fighter kind of mode, and we get there by kind of 10 minutes into the film. So that was the approach, and it seems to work. Well, that was the first time I managed to get an Act 1 that was under 50 pages. So we figured, hey, no problem. 150-page script, 50 pages per act, 3 hours. Boom.
The technology, it's incredible. The underwater scenes, I don't think anyone's seen anything like this. Mr. Cameron, did you have to wait for technology to get to where your vision?
We didn't. I know that's a story around the first film, and we did the first film was a combination of me just looking around the landscape and seeing the tool set mature, and then waiting for the right time to drop in to build our own tools specific to Avatar, the first film, on top of that. We didn't wait at all on the second film. We knew exactly what we needed to do, exactly where we needed to put resources, money, into it to improve our pipeline, and we knew that water simulations were a big part of that. Facial performance capture techniques and our facial pipeline, an important part of that. So while we were designing everything across 4 films, writing everything across 4 films, we were also developing this tool set in a highly targeted way during that period. And we have such a great relationship with Weta Effects. They were called Weta Digital at the time. They're now called Weta Effects. We have such a great relationship. There's times when we don't quite know where they end and my company begins, because we were swapping people back and forth, embedding a lot of their people with us to solve a lot of these sort of pipeline issues and software, coding issues as we went along. So we knew what we needed to do. It was all done in a kind of a pretty rational way, I think, the way it needed to be done to accomplish the look that you see on the screen. I'll tell you an interesting thing that just popped into my head. Underwater, not so hard. At the surface, getting in and out of the water, having water pouring on you in rain or pouring out of your hair as you're getting out of the water, the surface interface is the nightmare. The underwater bit, if you're just completely underwater, just kind of swimming around down there, that's not so difficult.
And those are some of the coolest scenes. The environmental messages in the first Avatar, there's obviously messages in Avatar: A Way of Water. Where do you think we are with that now?
Well, look, the film is hopeful. It's hopeful in the sense that I still believe that if people can be reached at some kind of subconscious or spiritual level about the beauty and the wonder of nature, that they'll do something about it. Where I think we actually are is we've got political systems that are an absolute failure at solving these existential problems. We're going to have to solve it ourselves, and we're going to have to put pressure on them because they don't lead, they follow the polls, So we, as the human population of the planet, have got to put pressure on our so-called leaders to actually do what's necessary to save the oceans, to stop climate change, et cetera, et cetera. And that's why I believe that, rather than just drop a bunch of money on elections, I'd rather spend all my time and energy on movies like this, because I'm talking directly to the voting public.